And we're back. On the Taxation and Customs Union website of the EU. And specific use. As a recap, we looked at temporary admission or TA, which allowed customs relief on a wide range of imports, as long as these imports were re-exported after use, or, where allowed, released to free circulation. And in the latter case, customs formalities apply. And with TA, goods cannot be sold or processed during the term of the TA authorization. But we see. Specific use comprises both temporary admission and end use. So next. End use. What is that? Like temporary admission, end use is also a customs special procedure. Note that end use is also known as, and referred to as, authorized use. Unlike temporary admission, end use allows a reduced, or zero rate of duty, for a restricted range of parts and raw material imports, when released to free circulation, as long as these are put to a given authorized use. And we'll see the list of authorized uses, allowed for end use relief, shortly. So bearing this in mind, how might end use be used? Roughly speaking, goods eligible for authorized use /end use may be brought into the customs territory under one of the other customs procedures, for example, inward processing, or temporary admission perhaps, or one of the others, and then released to free circulation. But just before releasing to free circulation, and as long as you have obtained end-use authorization from customs, for your specific consignment of goods, you can then include your authorization number in with your free circulation application, thus releasing your goods to free circulation with end use. What sort of goods are eligible for end-use relief? Goods potentially eligible for end-use relief are parts and materials used for the construction of ships, construction of civil aviation aircraft, and the construction of drilling platforms. But there are even more uses and eligible goods, but these may vary from territory to territory. And we'll see the list of goods eligible for end use in the UK shortly. Before that, prior to releasing my goods to free circulation, how might I get an end use authorization from the EU customs authorities? We see. The requirements to obtain such authorization are to be established in the customs territory of the Union, to provide necessary assurance of the proper conduct of the operations, to provide a guarantee. And you can contact your most suitable EU customs authority if you need to discuss arrangements and exceptions to these requirements. Next. Let's see what you have to do to get end-use approval from HMRC. Okay, great. So to continue, let's jump to HMRC and guidance. End-use relief. Find out how to claim relief on duty for certain goods imported into the EU that are put to a specific use. Scrolling down. And we see. End use is one of a range of measures designed to give UK and EU businesses an equal footing with businesses elsewhere in the world. Imports that qualify for end-use relief are listed right here. Before we list these, note, the basic assumption is that each import is different. So, in all cases, you need to check in advance with HMRC that your import qualifies for end-use relief. Never having done it may be a good idea to prepare, keep to hand, information on what, where, when, and importantly, why. If approved, you will get an authorization number. You need to include a customs-issued authorization number with each free circulation application in order to attach end-use relief. So, eligible goods. Eligible goods fall into the following categories: shipwork goods, aircraft and parts, hydrocarbon oil, marine propulsion engines, military equipment, fish, cheese, casein, used in the cheese industry. Particular goods are eligible. And we see. If eligible, you will find notes in the trade tariff footnotes for the commodities you want to import. The popular example is fish, that qualify for end-use duty relief when they are being used for food preparation. Down here. Unaffected and still payable. VAT. Excise duty. Or anti-dumping duty. But if you find and import any of these goods from up here, you will only be able to claim end-use relief only if you're authorized by HMRC. Your specific imports are eligible for end use. You put your goods to a prescribed use within a certain time. Note that if the end-use conditions set by customs is not met, then normal duties and charges apply when goods are released to free circulation. So let's look at some footnotes. We saw tariff footnotes in the UK Trade Tariff Tool in part 1 of this course. And it's in the footnotes where you will find out if your goods are eligible for end use. In part 1 of this course, we pretended to import umbrellas. But that isn't going to help us here. We need to change to something else. What? Okay, yes. Rivets. We'll pretend we are importing rivets. Okay, great. So let's give it a go. Okay. To be safe, let's duplicate this tab up here, just in case it all goes pear-shaped. And clicking the trade tariff link up here. Start now. Trade tariff, look up commodity codes, duty and VAT rates. And the all sections list. We could scroll this list, open section titles, and look for rivets. Or we could simply search for rivets. Yes. Let's do that. A drop-down list. Which one? Okay. Rivets, metal, iron or steel. Great. And threaded articles. Or non-threaded articles. Okay, click non-threaded, what's the worst that can happen? And rivets. Hurrah. For use in certain types of aircraft. Yep, let's do that. And why not? And we have a commodity code. One for imports. One for exports. So, if this was real life, we would definitely need to make a note of that, and in our case, for imports. Don't forget. This commodity code is for iron or steel, non-threaded rivets, for use in certain types of aircraft. Right. Next. Click the Imports tab. We see a list of import measures and restrictions. Measures for all countries. All of these are based on regulations from trade agreements and the like. So, we are pretending to import using erga omnes measures. We introduced import and export measures, erga omnes and such, in part 1 of this course. Erga omnes measures are third country measures that apply to all countries signed up to World Trade Organization rules. What about the other measures we see here? These represent individual countries. These others represent trading areas, or countries that have formed their own trading partnerships. All of these currently have agreements in effect with the UK. It doesn't matter that all of these individual countries will also most likely be found in the erga omnes group, because all these other measures override the erga omnes measures. Erga omnes measures, otherwise known as WTO measures, only take effect when no other measures are in effect. So, back to rivets, and using erga omnes rates. Immediately, we see autonomous suspension under end use. Autonomous suspension. What is that? Autonomous tariff or duty suspension indicates a customs measure, where usually a total suspension is applied to the third country import. That would be rivets, in our case. Without this suspension, a third country rate of duty would appear here. 3.70%. And there may be different reasons specified for applying an autonomous suspension. In our case, the reason is end-use relief. As an aside, we introduced quotas in part 1 of this course. And it's interesting to note that quotas are a similar beast to autonomous suspensions, with one key difference. So, what's the difference? Where quotas offer customs relief for a limited quantity of applicable goods over a specified period of time. Tariff suspensions offer customs waivers for an unlimited amount of the indicated goods within a given time limit. And all this only as long as other laws and regulations are not infringed or contravened. Laws such as anti-dumping laws, maybe a few others as well. So, we came here hunting for footnotes. Open that. We see the relief from, or reduction of, customs duties shall be subject to the conditions laid down in the relevant provisions of the European Union, with a view to customs control of the use of such goods. See Article 254 of Regulation, EU, No. 952/2013 of the European Parliament, etc. Is this regulation relevant to us? Well, there's one way to find out. Copying, Regulation, EU, No. 952/2013. Don't forget, we want to look up Article 254 within this regulation. Up here. And paste. Regulation, EU, No. 952/2013. This act has been changed. Current consolidated version. Okay, click that. Good. Opening. Scroll down. A bit more. And Regulation, EU, No. 952/2013. Yes, we're in the right place. So, Control and F bottom left corner. And let's search for Article 254. Keep going. And here we are. We see the terms for end use that apply to our rivets. In real life, we would study this text. And you can pause to read if you like. And I recommend that you do. But I'll head back to continue. So, now we know our rivets are eligible for end use. Hurrah! What else do we need? Scrolling down to how to claim end-use relief on imports. We see you might need Form C88, the Single Administrative Document, SAD, for import and export. We looked at this in an earlier video, and we'll revisit this form in a later video. What else? You need a description of your goods. And a preference code. A preference code. What is that? When goods are released to free circulation, it identifies whether a reduction in duty applies, or whether a full relief from duty applies. Preference codes identify the nature of relief for your imports. How do they do that? Well, the preference code is a 3-digit code. At the time of writing, HMRC has 5 broad categories of relief. And the first digit of the preference code indicates to which of these 5 broad categories your particular import belongs. Each of these 5 broad categories can be broken down into subcategories. And so, the second and third digits of the preference code identify to which particular subcategory your import belongs. And we can see this if we jump to Guidance. UK Trade Tariff, Imports and Community Transport Inwards. Coincidentally, we see the rules governing customs procedures for imports into the UK from outside the UK and EU, up until they are entered into free circulation, can be found in our old friend Regulation, EU, number 952/2013. Articles 12 to 14. And some other regulations and statutes. And that's nice. And on to preference codes. We'll do a search for box 36. What is box 36? When completing a paper declaration, box 36 is where you can enter your preference code. And we'll look at the paper declaration, Form C88, the Single Administrative Document, SAD, again, as well as box 36 in a later video. Here are the definitions indicated by the first digit. Here are the definitions indicated by the second and third digits. In our case, we are importing rivets under normal arrangements of tariff suspension with specified end use. So we want one from up here. What about the table below? 15. Giving us 115 as our preference code. Let's look up 115. We can scroll down a little further. And we see a definitive list of combinations for normal tariff arrangements. 115. Tariff suspension subject to a specific end use. Certain suspensions are linked to a specific destination, a so-called end use pursuant to Article 82 of the Common Customs Code. Commodities are identified by the symbol S in the UK trade tariff and the footnote, subject to end use. That doesn't sound right. We didn't see that at all. Back up. 18 doesn't look right. How about 40? This would give us 140. Let's look that up. Scrolling down. 140. Exemption for end use resulting from the Common Customs Tariff. All cases of end use are marked by one of the following footnotes to the relevant CN code. Entry under this subheading is subject to conditions laid down in the relevant EU provisions. Yes, we saw that in our footnote. So our preference code looks to be 140. In real life, if we wanted to be sure, we could contact the HMRC Imports and Exports General Enquiries. And we'll see that page again later. Next. Custom Procedure Codes or CPCs. But first, I'll take a quick scroll downwards to view other combinations and definitions of preference codes. You can pause to read if you wish. And that's nice. And we're back on HMRC guidance and end-use relief. As a recap, we've checked that our products, rivets in this case, are eligible for end use. In the process, we saw how to find and get a commodity code using the trade tariff. But you can also enter a valid commodity code in the search box to quickly access measures and associated information. As an aside, you might see the commodity codes referred to as CN codes. CN stands for Combined Nomenclature. The Combined Nomenclature, CN, is a tool for classifying goods in the EU. The combined nomenclature is set with data from the CCT or Common Customs Tariff. In the UK, the equivalent, the UK Trade Tariff Tool, or simply the Trade Tariff, is set with rules and data from the UK tariff. So, what's in a tariff? A tariff applies duties, reliefs, and measures taken from related agreements and legal documents. And it applies these to the external borders of the related customs territory. Both the CCT and UK tariff hold tariff data such as duty for all sorts of goods from all over the world, as well as the laws, rules and regulations that guide and inform on these duties, and also the duty reliefs, quotas, and a lot more besides. Prior to Brexit, the UK and EU would have shared the same tariff. And we might expect divergences, over time, between these two tariffs, from when the Brexit transition period expires. Even though everything is rapidly changing, but hopefully, the topics we introduce may still have use in the future, even if just for academic or personal development purposes perhaps. Topics such as preference codes. And we've just looked at preference codes. And what did we learn? Preference codes identify the nature of any customs relief for your goods movement. But importantly, as we saw, it's too easy to slip up. But as long as you find the right commodity code, or CN code, for your goods movement to start with, and as long as you find the right information in the footnotes, and it's worth looking up any regulations and articles mentioned in the footnotes. Then you will be in a better position to construct the correct preference code, and any errors in this endeavor may reveal themselves. Be easier to spot. As a beginner, you might also contact HMRC via the Imports and Exports General Enquiries to check your work. And we'll show the General Enquiries page again later. So, scrolling back down to How to claim end-use relief on imports. And the next item on the list is Customs Procedure Codes. Great. So next, you also need something called a Customs Procedure Code. What is that? Customs Procedure Codes are codes that represent the procedures that your goods movements follow. In other words, they represent the stages and rules, commonly referred to as regimes, under which you want a goods movement to operate. Scrolling down a bit, we see Customs Procedure Code. The Customs Procedure Code is a 7-digit number used to identify the customs procedure that will apply to your goods. You will need to use an appropriate customs procedure code when declaring your imported goods to make sure you can claim relief. This should be entered in box 37 of the SAD. We will drill down into Custom Procedure Codes, also known as CPCs, and where these go in the SAD in later videos. Scrolling down to How to apply for end-use authorization. Authorizations are issued to the importers or their agents. There are 4 types of authorization. End-use authorization within the UK. This use is an online form, SP1. More on this in a moment. End-use authorization by declaration. So, with this option, you cannot use simplified declaration procedures. And we introduced CSFP in earlier videos. Yep. Not that, not here. Instead, use the paper-based declarations form, C88. Your authorization for end use, any statement identifier codes, relevant to your application, can all go in box 44 of this form. Box 44. What is that? This is the miscellaneous text box, which can hold a wide variety of different code types, including your DUCA and UCR, as well as other codes, abbreviating additional information. And more. All go in box 44. But take note. You can't use Form C88 more than 3 times a year and for simple operations within the UK. And on these occasions, your goods must be valued less than £500,000. Authorization if processing or movement involves more than just a single member state. This is known as multi-state authorizations. Multi-state authorizations are authorizations that are valid in more than one member state. But we'll also come back to multi-state authorizations in a later video. Retrospective authorization. For example, if you realize a previous application for, let's say, free circulation should have included an end-use element, but you omitted to include it, then you might apply for a retrospective authorization. And good luck. HMRC only allow this option on very rare instances, supported by strong arguments. For now, end-use authorization within the UK. Click Form SP1. Form. Apply for end-use relief, SP1. There are 2 options for applying. You can apply online, sign in using Government Gateway. And we introduced the Government Gateway in an earlier video. Also you can apply by post. And you need to complete an online form to apply by post. We'll take a quick look at notes to help you apply for end-use relief. Contents. So, I guess, whether you are applying via your UK Government Gateway account, or whether your application is by post, we see the information you will need includes a UK EOI. Specimen example here, 12 numbers beginning with GB. Also provide your EU authorization number, if you have one. If you have been approved for end-use equivalence, or other equivalents. Then, provide your authorization number, or Customs Office reference for your equivalence application, where the authorization was for identical goods, in the last 3 years. Notes also given here if you want to change an existing EU authorization, or renew an existing EU authorization. And lastly, you need to tell HMRC the period that you wish to be authorized for. Not normally backdated, but if you wish to apply for an earlier date, you will need to explain why, and show all requirements for end use have been met during the retro period. But the maximum period for a retrospective authorization is 1 year from your application date. Don't forget. You need to put your goods to a prescribed use within a certain time. Okay, great. And don't forget. We saw that when applying for end use in the EU, the customs authorities expect you to be established in the customs territory of the Union, to provide necessary assurance of the proper conduct of the operations, to provide a guarantee, and you can contact them to discuss individual circumstances. So hopefully, we have now seen how to check if your goods are eligible for end use, and how then to seek authorization from HMRC for your imports. In this process, you are asked to specify your preferred time frame, but customs ultimately control your start and end dates for end use authorization. And there is a lot more information on the HMRC pages. And that's great. But we'll take a quick scroll through the HMRC Imports and Exports General Enquiries page, just in case you need further help. And then we'll move on, next, to the re-export procedure. Fab.